This video contains spoilers for Stranger Things Seasons 1 through 4 and The First Shadow. Vecna created the Mind Flayer. This fact is no surprise to you if you paid attention during the reveal that Henry Creel and Vecna are one and the same in Season 4. But it hasn't stopped people from wildly theorizing about how the Mind Flayer is the true villain. It's sort of ridiculous though, at least from a narrative standpoint. The entire idea of introducing Vecna is to have this actual human antagonist with motive and more personal conflict with Eleven, who was the true puppeteer of these crazy events the whole time. It's a plot twist. It completely recontextualizes what we know about the Upside Down and also of Eleven's origins. Although it annoys me to no end that people still think this, there are two key reasons that people do, which I'd like to go over and refute. But before we do that, we first need to understand what the Mind Flayer is, who Vecna is, and the relationship to each other and the Upside Down using evidence from the show. The Mind Flayer is introduced as the big bad for Season 2 of the show, and it is quite a jump from the single Demogorgon of the previous outing. What we learn this season is that the Upside Down is a hive mind, which means that in some way every single part of the Upside Down, be the plants, the creatures, whatever, are all in some way connected as one being, communicated to by the brain, which is the Mind Flayer. This is all a really good setup to have an audience go, Mind Flayer equals brain, got it. Brain gone equals Upside Down gone, got it. Mind Flayer is endgame, got it. Which is the intent, by the way. The Mind Flayer is the only overarching villains for multiple seasons up to this point, at least until Season 5 rolls around, and he's also bigger and more all-encompassing, the whole 9 yards. The key thing I want to point out about how the Mind Flayer functions before we get into Season 4, though, is the way that flaying works. So it's shown throughout the show that the Mind Flayer has the ability to essentially use the particles it's made out of and jut them into people and animals, keep this in mind for later, to add them to his army as a puppet for him to control. In Season 3, this is dubbed as flaying, but this also happens to Will in Season 2, which is why he starts acting crazy. Your mom! I'm sorry! There's a super important detail at the end of this season that most people seem to just miss, and it's about Dustin's relationship to Dart. Okay, so if you forgot, Dustin had this random side plot in Season 2 where he raised a little Demogorgon Pollywog thing even though he knew it was from the Upside Down. I mean, I get it, Tamagotchi wasn't for another 13 years, you gotta do something, but geez. And that's kind of how everyone felt, including the other characters in this show. Dustin, what are you doing? Dustin, you're gonna get us killed. Dustin, why are you still trying to connect with what we know is an objectively evil creature? It ate your fucking cat. That's usually all that people remember about it, that Dustin made a bad decision that the gang then had to correct, but it actually ends with Dustin proving them wrong. The setup is Dustin, Steve, Mike, and Max in the Upside Down tunnels under Hawkins, with a Demodog approaching them and Steve immediately going to swing, but Dustin stepping forward and recognizing it as Dart because of the little spot on its butt. Everyone is freaking out because clearly this thing is just part of the hive mind, but Dustin calms him down and gives him some Three Musketeers to leave them alone. The Mind Flayer has no reason to do this, but Dart does, because he loves Dustin. Aww. This exact behavior is an extension of what we see earlier with Will, that even though he was completely zombified, the people that he loved helped him find his sense of individualism again, so he could tell them how to stop the Mind Flayer in Morse code. The implication from this is clear. Demogorgons are not inherent to the Upside Down's hive mind. They likely are flayed in the same way that humans are, and the Demogorgons just happen to be what the Mind Flayer had access to use as its foot soldiers. That makes the Mind Flayer an invader, not just of Hawkins, but of the Upside Down too. That begs the question, if this thing invaded the Upside Down and has fully taken it over, just as it now plans to do with the right side up, where exactly did it come from? Vecna / Henry / 1. Just some kid with natural psychic powers. He's kind of a freak, loves spiders, thinks they're the master race, starts drawing them in the sky, kills his entire family in 1959. Brenner abducts him right after this when he's like 12, starts his MK Ultra testing in Hawkins, and produces multiple children who also have psychic abilities. Henry is forced to work there, kept in check by what I think is a power inhibitor of some sort. Long story short, in 1979, 4 years before Season 1, Henry gains Eleven's trust, and she helps him to escape, but then he goes and murders all of the children, so they fight in psychic baby jail until Eleven uses so much psychic power that she opens a dimensional portal that Henry is sucked into. We don't really know where this is. It isn't the Upside Down, at least we don't think so. It's not a reflection of Hawkins, it's got a red sky instead of a black sky, and the Upside Down we know is the Hawkins from 1983. We don't have much info on it, but we'll call this Dimension X for now. This is where Vecna presumably resides until at least the events of Season 1. What's important is what he finds here. First, Demogorgons just sort of minding their own business, and then particles. Particles that are not in the form of anything. Watch closely to what happens here. Henry uses his psychic powers to form the particles into a spider-like shape in the sky. He is bringing the Mind Flayer to life based on the drawings he made as a kid. It could not have existed before this. The Mind Flayer is the means to Henry's control over the forces of the Upside Down. Think about it like wiring. Without direction, wiring does nothing. Hence, it just sits there out in the open, powering nothing. Henry's special abilities give him dominion over the shadow particles, so he can use them to connect things together to one whole. This is part of the plot twist. Not just that Henry is Vecna, but that the Mind Flayer is an extension of him.
That's all, Dustin? That's all? Yeah, no, that's pretty much it.
Now we can return to our original question. Why, despite countless pieces of evidence in the show suggesting otherwise, do people still insist that the Mind Flayer is the ultimate villain? Reason number one is Dustin's speech. Dustin gives a speech in the very same episode before the big twist where he remarks that Vecna, in the Upside Down's military hierarchy, is the Mind Flayer's 5-star general, with the ability to open gates. This has been pointed out countless times as evidence to the contrary, but I think there are 3 important pieces of information to keep in mind that may change your perspective. Number 1, a huge theme of this season is that no one has any idea what's truly going on. They sort of figure it out at the end, at least to the point that they're able to fight him, but there are entire scenes and conversations dedicated to the fact that the main crew is kind of screwed.
We're technically in more of the brainstorming phase.
Brainstorming. There's nothing to worry about.
With all of the characters separated, they don't have any opportunity to exchange the different pieces of information they've learned. This is baked into the structure of all previous seasons, and the intentional withdrawal of this plot device is exactly the reason that this is the only season they lose. Dustin can be wrong. He didn't have all the info. Number 2 is sequence. We see Dustin's speech about Vecna being the 5-star general before we get the huge plot twist about Henry being Vecna and about him creating the Mind Flayer. That is intentional. The plot twist we see is structured to be a direct rebuttal of Dustin's theory. Number 3, Vecna's ability to open gates at all. Have you ever wondered why, if he's been trapped in an alternate dimension for almost a decade, Vecna would suddenly out of nowhere decide, okay, now it's time to open gates? That would be a glaring plot hole if not explained. See, 11 is the only psychic child to have the ability to open gates initially. Henry just didn't have that. It's why he couldn't get back to the right side up and had to leverage the gates that were opened by her and the Russians in the previous seasons, as they were his only way in. He gains the ability to open gates by stealing 11's power using the flesh monster from season 3. We see that much like Vecna of D&D, Henry essentially takes a part of everything he kills and becomes more powerful. This is referenced a couple of times in season 4 and even by Brenner himself. This gives even more context to Billy's speech to 11 in season 3, when he says,
"All this time, we've been building it. We've been building it for you."
It wasn't just to kill 11 and get her out of the way. It was to give him a way back in. His plan for domination of the right side up had started as soon as he had a second opportunity to invade and refused to be locked out again. And immediately after the bite, 11 loses her powers. The flesh monster was Henry's way of stealing 11's more powerful abilities. This is a little harder to spot, but it's imperative to understanding why the events of season 4 happen when they do, instead of Henry just doing this before the show even starts when it would have been way easier for him. Okay, that should patch up the Dustin argument, but there is one massive one that makes literally 0 sense, and yet the writers of the show have confirmed that it is canon. I am, of course, talking about the first shadow. Okay, so if you're unfamiliar, maybe because it isn't available anywhere and is exclusive to Broadway, Stranger Things made this live show about Henry Creel and Vecna before the events of the show, and it's supposedly canon, as stated by the Duffer Brothers. I couldn't find anything of the Duffer Brothers actually saying that this is canon, other than people online just saying that they had. I do know that they did say it at least had nods to the series, and of course, the writers did say that it was. Okay, I wanted to interject here because when I was trying to find screenshots for this section of the video, I was looking through, and not only could I not find anywhere where the Duffers said that it was canon, even though people have said it that it was, I couldn't find an interview or anything like that. And I could have just been wrong. Like, I could have just not been finding it. I swore that there was a tweet from the Stranger Writers Twitter account that had said that the first shadow is canon, and I don't see it. Now, I will say it is like documented to be canon. Most people are saying it is, and like I think most of Netflix's official accounts and everything, like all of the official marketing for it does say it is canon. But no one that has worked on the show has actually said it's canon, and even there is that photo that you'll see right now that shows that the Duffer Brothers said it doesn't really line up. And it just makes it increasingly more upsetting that they are trying to say that it is canon, and then that people are saying, no, it's canon, it's super important. Anyway, I just wanted to clear that up because what I was writing was not fully lined up with the truth, and I guess I was more right than I thought I was. If we take it at face value and assume that this is canon to the narrative of the show, yes, the first shadow just destroys everything I have set up to this point. I could only get a plot summary, but the gist of it is that Henry only started acting fucked up after he accidentally entered a portal in some cave that transferred him to Dimension X, and that's way before 1959 when the events of the flashback in Season 4 happened. The Mind Flayer already existed in this space as a sentient being, and essentially flayed him, which altered his blood type, and is single-handedly what gave him psychic abilities, which is, whoa, no one else got those from being flayed, including Will, who we've been following for 3 seasons post-flaying, and I'm pretty fucking certain Hawkins' lab would pick up on if he was given an entirely new blood type, but whatever. It'd be one thing if this is the only inconsistency with the show, and then they decided to hail it as canon. It's less interesting, it sort of defeats the purpose of introducing a human antagonist, but you can view it as sort of a course correct, akin to the retroactive lore of FNAF's sister location, right? Five Nights at Freddy's does this thing all the time where they'll put something out there and then they'll do a new thing and they're like, I kind of did this wrong and it was misconstrued, like here's the fix for it, right? But that's not what this is. This play is entirely incongruent with the series. Now Henry is in high school when the Creel House Massacre takes place in 1959. He fucking kills Bob Newby's dad, despite him being pretty adamant about Hawkins being a place where nothing ever happens in Season 2.
Man, I always thought stuff like this happened in movies and comic books. Well, certainly not.
The first shadow.
Hopper and Joyce are also looking into this in high school together and never seem to relate it back to the strange occurrences taking place in the present 80s timeline. And more importantly, he opens a gate in this play at one point, which is insane because it brings about a huge plot hole of why he didn't just do this during the duration of the entire show. Clearly, this play just can't be canon. Otherwise, the show just doesn't make any sense. It is possible, though, that they are going to run with this being canon now, moving into Season 5. And there are people who are going to defend that decision pretty hard despite it being a really bad one. It's just a retcon, is what they'll say. Are retcons inherently bad? The short answer to that is no. All a retcon means is retroactive continuity. It's literally anything that happens before the present timeline that a story takes place in. You could argue any flashback occupies this space, like any flashbacks we get of Eleven's past in Season 1 fall under the technical definition, but that's not really how it's used or what I mean here. Nowadays, it's used in a more meta sense, a retcon being pieces of a story that an actual writer, after writing the original story, decides to introduce later to a character's backstory to add more flavor. Things like the existence of Collie, Billy's backstory in Season 3, Hopper's dead daughter being the result of his exposure to Agent Orange leading to birth defects.
I am the curse.
And literally the existence of Henry /Vecna/1. These things are all mostly great for the show. There's a key difference in the way that these retcons are handled versus the story of the first shadow though, and that is that they aren't contradictory. Every retcon thus far has been additive. Canonizing this play would devalue the narrative we've been presented before because now it just didn't happen that way. More importantly, it obliterates everything that made Vecna work so well in Season 4. There are surface level plot holes, but also the fact that Vecna being the ultimate puppeteer made Eleven's relationship with the threat significantly more interesting. It's two viewpoints on dealing with trauma. You know, if you're Henry, you derive strength from it, which sounds good by itself, but the result is that trauma ultimately consumes you. It becomes your identity, and therefore your only contribution to the world at large is hatred and destruction. And Eleven, at least as we see her development moving from Season 3 and 4, it's the exact opposite. Despite having borderline the same traumatic past and the same difficulty adjusting to societal norms, she finds it in her to push back hatred and derive her strength from love and finding new belonging. As soon as you swap that relationship back to a girl who has to defeat an eldritch monster, the emotional weight is gone and it's replaced with a physical obstacle. So, is the first shadow canon? I'm worried that they're gonna decide that it is, because if they do, it will completely ruin the return to form that Season 4 showcased the writers were capable of. At the very least, we can say that it is entirely incongruent, and further, that implementing it would tank the quality of the show's big finale considerably. All I can hope is that Season 5 goes in the same direction that the rest of the show is, and they throw something together that is at least logical with what came before. All that to say, there is a reason that Vecna created the Mind Flayer. So is Season 5 gonna be good? We'll see.